Good morning. I'm Jamie Finizio Bascombe, president of the Broward County Bar Association, and I'm so honored to be here and starting our celebration and for the whole month for Women's History Month and Women's International Day and month as well, as we've made it. And we are here doing our interviews of our judges in the 17th Circuit that we are honoring at our event, and it is going to be a wonderful event. You're listening to this while you're there today, most likely, and hopefully watching this so that you can learn some nuggets and good information about our local judges. So we're going to start off with a longtime friend and wonderful member of our bench here, Stacey Shulman, Judge Stacey Shulman, and she's going to be interviewing with me, answering my crazy questions about her and her life so that you get to see a little bit about what she did before becoming a judge, what made her want to become a judge, and what her experience has been like on the bench. So good morning to you, Judge Stacey Shulman.
Good morning, Jamie. How are you?
Good. Thanks for being here with us and with Braulio. He does a great job in organizing all of this.
Always.
And I know everyone's busy, but it's just so important for our community to have that connection with our judges. I think it's great for the judges to have that connection with the lawyers too. And I know you agree because you're a great supporter of the BCBA and all that we do.
Well, I'm honored to be here, honored to be included, and I really appreciate you taking time out of your schedule since you're busy 25/7, not 24/7, I think.
As you.
and sharing your morning with me. So.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's get a little bit into your background, of a little bit about you and what you kind of bring to the public with your experience.
Sure. So I'm a native Floridian, born and raised down here. My mom likes to joke I'm the first Floridian she ever met. She had to give birth to me. I grew up in Plantation, graduated from Nova High School in Davie, public school, Broward County schools. And after school down here, sort of knew I always wanted to come back home, but I knew I wanted to go somewhere else first. So I actually went to undergrad at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York.
Brr.
Yeah, so I got to learn like what winter was, and that I definitely didn't want to live in that climate.
Yeah.
And after 4 years of living in Ithaca, and Cornell's wonderful, I had a great 4 years there studying industrial and labor relations. I had the opportunity to come back home and attend the University of Miami for law school. So I was able to come back down south to Florida and do my law school education at Miami. So
wonderful. I know your parents were probably thrilled that you came back for law school.
Yes.
And so tell us about your parents. I know you have a very close relationship with them, and they're also very involved in the community. I've met them many times at different philanthropic events and very, very caring and giving. So tell us about them and what that was like and their encouragement of you.
So I think for me, part of why I think I became a judge is because my parents were always so community minded. We were raised in a home where philanthropy wasn't something you did, it was part of your life. And I just always sort of grew up knowing that like you have an obligation to help others. You have an obligation to live your life, to leave the world a better place than you found it. And we're all very close. I'm still very close with my parents. They still live down here. We're 10 minutes away, see each other often. And so they were always very supportive of whatever my aspirations were going to be. When I was very young, I wanted to be the first woman, youngest Jewish president. I swear if you ask people I went to kindergarten with,
Wow.
they will still say, still going to be the first woman, youngest Jewish president.
Yes.
I saw my first presidential campaign and realized, politics just aren't for me. I don't want to run in an election. I don't want to do any of that. And maybe it was too much LA law, but I decided I really like the law and I like the whole judges thing. So I sort of got in my head that I wanted to become a judge. And thankfully I had parents who were like, you can do whatever you want to do. You can be whatever you want to be. Just work hard and, we'll support you. And so during my senior year of high school, I had the opportunity to do an externship. So basically I could go to school to like lunch and then you could do something in the afternoon. And Judge Susan Lebo, who my dad was the first treasurer on her first campaign back in the 80s, was on the bench. And so we called her and said, would you mind having a high school intern, during my senior year? She said, great. And I really attribute her as one of my mentors because I would go and watch her in court every afternoon for the first semester of my senior year. And I always sort of thought I wanted to be a judge. And after spending those days in the courtroom, I was like, no, I need to be a judge. Like you hear about people finding their calling, you know, whether it's doctors or whatever. And I sat and I was like, this is where I want to be. And so my high school yearbook doesn't say I want to be a lawyer. It says I actually want to be a judge.
And that's incredible that you had that opportunity. And I happen to know her as well. And she was one of the first judges I was in front of when I prosecuted. My father knew her years ago. And I remember she was very good about stopping during the trial, taking breaks, and telling us as young lawyers, you know, there's some ideas, and she would give them both sides, which is really important, I think, for judges to do too.
Absolutely.
And, you know, of course, not crossing any line, but just giving good input, because those things we remember. And I still remember some of the things I learned from her from those trials.
Yeah, and she was good about making sure I didn't just watch her. I watched other trials and other judges, and she really wanted me to see the courthouse. And after a semester with her, she said to me, she sort of had in her mind that I was going to work for the state attorney's office someday, but she said, I think it's important that you go work with the public defender's office. So it was still Al Schreiber at the time, but Howard Finkelstein was there, and they paired me up with Susan Porter. So I spent a semester working under Susan Porter. And Susan would bring me to the jail, and Susan was one of the homicide PDs, and we'd go see people in the jail. And at 17, I was sitting with accused murderers and meeting with clients, and it was eye-opening to me. I sort of still knew I wanted to go work with the state, but it really gave me a different appreciation as far as the zealous representation that the public defenders and all of our defense attorneys give to the accused. And so, you know, I count myself very fortunate in having that exposure at such a young age, but also sort of furthering my resolve that this is what I want to do. So I went to college, like, I have to go to college because then I want to go to law school, and I actually graduated law school in 2.5 years, went straight through the summers, like a crazy person. I know.
remember your when you were coming through the JNC, and I was lucky enough to be on that JNC when you came through the first time, and seeing that and trying to calculate the ages and saying, wait a minute, how young were you?
Yeah.
So yes, that's impressive.
So I went through because I knew I had to be a lawyer 5 years before I could be a judge. So I'm like, well, the sooner I get out of law school and the sooner I become a member of the bar, that 5 years starts ticking. So for me, it was like, let's just get to it. But, you know, those opportunities were so huge for me, and that's one of the reasons why now, particularly as a judge, when someone calls me and they're like, would you take an intern? I'm like, how many do you got? Like, bring them in, because I very much believe in paying it forward.
Beautiful.
Because those are the opportunities that I think, made me or helped me get where I am today. And to the extent that I can help someone else attain their dreams or figure out what they want to do. Because I say to my interns, listen, you may come sit with me in court and you may realize this is absolutely what I don't want to do. And in my view, that's as important as figuring out what you do want to do.
So true.
So I've had that opportunity. You know, I will mentor both men and women. I don't discriminate.
Yes.
But I've had some wonderful interns, and I always say to them, the only thing I ask is that if and when you're ready to become a member of the bar, I get first dibs on swearing in.
Right. That's great.
Because Howard Zeidwig, who's one of the judges I was fortunate enough to appear in front of when I was a prosecutor, said, you know, we talked to him. He was another one great about coming off the bench and giving tips. And, you know, we'd have downtime and he'd be like, all right, we're going to talk, you know, closing statements. And, you know, he was really wonderful about that. And he said to us, and it really stuck with me, particularly once I was on the bench, you know, one of the things we talked about, like, what makes you feel like a judge? And he said, obviously sitting on the criminal bench and sentencing someone is a very judicial act. But he said his favorite judicial act was actually swearing people into the bar. Because he said, you know, you don't have to be a judge to swear someone into the bar, but as a judge, to welcome people into the bar and be able to do that is a wonderful thing, and particularly if you've played any role in their legal education.
What an awesome reward.
Yeah.
And to know that you're contributing in that way. And it's so true what you're saying too about having these interns and even anybody that you come in contact with. So, you know, I always say to lawyers too, on the professionalism or in the mentoring, everybody who sees you and their experience of a deposition even, or going to court, or walking into the courthouse and seeing you as a lawyer or a judge, that is an impact on them of our system. And you can ask people at a cocktail party or at any public place, you know, what has your experience been with lawyers? And whether it was in the elevator or whether it was in a courtroom, that is so important that you are impacting them in such a way that could be positive.
Right.
And you never know, too, who the next amazing lawyer or judge or legislator could be that is coming through your courtroom and can learn from that and be inspired.
Right. And I firmly believe that we are very much, you know, the outward face of the system, and there is so much distrust of the system among so much of the public. And look, I'm in the dependency division. People who come in front of me, for the most part, are not happy to be there.
No.
But I view my job is to help the families. So that doesn't just mean, making sure they're getting the right services. It means when they're sitting in court with me, they understand what's going on. They feel like they're heard. They feel like they're part of the process. So even if I'm ruling against them, they at least feel like they got a fair shake. And so I very much try to slow things down. People are using acronyms. I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I know what that means, but
Right.
sir, ma'am, you probably don't. And, I definitely have had parents that after the fact, will thank me. And that's, as gratifying it is to reunify kids with parents, or to do an adoption and let a child, find their forever family. It's also really rewarding when you feel like you gave someone a fair shake. Win or lose, that's how people should leave a courtroom. That they feel like they got a fair shake. And if I can be a part of that process, or make sure that that's how things are working, then I feel like I'm doing my job.
No,
So,
absolutely. That's amazing, Judge. No, it's and your background in your practice of law was not in family law, right?
No,
So it's completely
no.
a change and shift of gears.
It was. I was a prosecutor for 9 years under Mr. Satz, and who jokingly called me judge the entire time I was in the office. He used to be like, "What's up, Judge?" Because he knew from the day he hired me that that's what I wanted to do. But I worked my way up through the juvenile division, county court. I worked in the felony trial division. And then I went to the sex crimes unit. And I spent about 2.5 years in the sex crimes unit. And I touched on the dependency because sometimes the victims of our child abuse cases had a companion dependency case. But that was as close as I sort of got to things. And then I went on to the organized crime and gang unit. I was in special prosecutions. So really nothing in the family law. Left and went to work for Morgan & Morgan for about 1.5 years doing employment law, got my federal practice in, and then had an opportunity with Greenspoon Martyr and worked there for about 2.5 years before I was elected. And, I ran for a judge, again, going back to my childhood and my upbringing, because I wanted to make a difference as a judge. And I feel like in dependency, you can touch, see, and feel the difference you're making.
Absolutely.
So Judge Hope Team in Bristol, after I was elected, was sort of like, well, what do you think of dependency? Like, what do you think? And Susan Lebo, who I said I had interned with before, was one of the dependency judges at the time. It was Judge Bristol, Judge Lebo, and Judge Gillespie were the 3 judges, and Judge Merrigan was there. And Judge Merrigan is one of the most amazing human beings, but was not in love with dependency and was looking to go on to criminal because he was doing the veterans court and he was being pulled in a million different directions. So he's like, listen, if you want this spot, I'll be happy to move.
Yeah.
And I saw it as like an incredible opportunity. And I was sort of like, well, I'll do it I promised Judge Bristol I would do it for a few years, like maybe 3, because I was the 3rd judge. I was the 6th judge in my division in 3 years, which is really not great for those families because turnover just doesn't breathe the stability.
Because how long, more or less, is the process from like the beginning of a case to the end?
Well, the statute says 12 months. Unfortunately, a lot of our families need more help than just 12 months. I have some kids that were part of the system when I came in, and I've now watched them become teenagers, go through high school and grad. So, sometimes I'm the only consistent person on their case.
Right.
So, a promise of 3 years has turned into 7.
It's been that long? Oh,
yeah,
my goodness.
I have no plans on leaving, so no matter what rumors you might hear in the courthouse, I'm not looking to go anywhere because I still feel like I have more work to do. I still feel like I'm making a difference. I still feel like I'm learning. I have great colleagues in the dependency division, and it's a remarkable place. So I love what I'm doing and just want to keep doing it. And yes, it's a far departure from, when I was, doing gang cases, back in 2010. But I wouldn't trade it for anything.
And it's good too for people to also realize, keeping their mind open. You kind of get pigeonholed sometimes into an area of practice, and it's kind of scary sometimes to have to learn a whole new. But it's exciting, and it's also making you that much more well-rounded, I think, and to see those cases in that way because of your past background in different areas.
And it helps. Sometimes I'll have a parent come in front of me and they're like, "Yeah, I'm getting out of jail on Tuesday," and I'm like, okay, and I'll ask the parties, do you mind if I look at his criminal case? No, and I'm like, sir, you have like a no bond hold on a violation of probation. And because I have the background in criminal, I understand. I can look at a criminal
Right.
case and understand it. I've definitely had to learn a ton. I did not know a lot about family. And we have a great unified family court model in Broward. So dependency is like the black hole.
Yeah.
So if our family has a removal, I get the child's delinquency case, I get the domestic violence restraining orders, and I get the dissolutions of marriage. So
Right.
I had to get a quick education on the family division and child support and a lot of things I certainly never touched before. But look, I'm a nerd. I find it interesting, and I love to read and learn, and I'm not bored with it. So
Well, you're doing a great job
Thank
there,
you.
making differences in lives for sure. So, specifically, were there obstacles that you face that you share with young lawyers or when you mentor different students about what you faced, and to give them that encouragement to keep pushing and follow your dream?
Well, for me, I've always say I'm very blessed. I'm very lucky. I think I'm luckier than most because my dream did come true. But a lot of times I was told, like, wait your turn, take your time, and I was sort of like, this is what I want to do. So I'm not going to do it on someone else's timetable. If I feel like I'm ready, hopefully everyone else will agree. And so, you have to be your own advocate. You have to realize what you're ready for, what you're not ready for, and continue to do that. So, I tell the people in front of me, the lawyers or young lawyers or the law students who are working with me, like, if you know you want to do something, push for it. Because if you're not advocating for yourself, if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else
will.
is. And I think that carries through. I know you're really involved in PACE, and I know that's one thing that PACE really tries to instill in the girls who come in front of there. You need to believe in yourself.
Right.
And these are children, and I see it a lot in my foster care kids, particularly my older teens. Nobody's ever really believed in them, or they felt that nobody ever's believed
Right.
in them. And so trying to instill that in them, trying to make sure that they believe in it, whether they're a law student or a child is in front of me in court, it's I think
Right.
really important. And that's, luckily, I always had people surrounding me who were telling me I could do it.
Right.
Right.
A lot of us were very lucky to have that. But like you said, on the foster care system, of course, and dealing with that philanthropically and what we do with that, your experience with those children and understanding the, again, awesome responsibility that you are the first person really that's going to give them that possibly in their life. They've either been mistreated, they've either been abused, they've been told that they're good for nothing. So even aside from the legal side of things, right, just even being that...
Like, yeah, I mean, a lot of what we do as judges in dependency is social work. There was one of the things that I've taken up in the last few years is through the help of Legal Aid and Melissa Green and Kiara Jackson over at Legal Aid, they helped us form something called Hope Court, helping older teens powerfully engage. It's a specialty court we founded
That's
2 years ago
amazing.
because there's sort of this like void. We've done a much better job with our older teens than we used to. I'm sure you remember a time where like a child turned 18 and we were like, good luck.
Right.
Like
Yep.
when you and I turned 18, our parents were still there to help us
Right.
transition to college and transition. And listen, I still call my parents when I have a difficult decision to make now. Right. And these are kids who, it used to be they were left out. Now we do have an extended foster care system. But, there's a real mistrust often of the system,
Right.
despite everything that we're trying to do, particularly with those older teens who may feel sort of left behind in the system.
Right.
So Hope Court uses a restorative justice model and really is trying to bring these kids back in and realize that they haven't been left out, that they're not going to be left out when they turn 18. So we started this court 2 years ago. We had
impressive.
we had our first cohort. We're about to start our second cohort in June. We've paired with Nova so they can do some studies, so we can have some data and research to back up
Right.
the successes that we're sort of
Statistical, yeah.
anecdotally we're seeing the success, but everybody wants to see the math
Empirical.
and the science. Exactly.
Yes, and that's-
I think it's caught the eye of Tallahassee, and just as from a human being perspective, I love it. Like my Hope Corps days are my favorite days because I have these kids who I feel like I'm really connecting with. I've had kids that they're turning 18. I show up on their 18th birthday with a cookie cake and balloons because I want them to
Wow.
know that somebody is there. That I'm not just sitting there in a black robe saying I'm here for you.
You're
I'll go
invested
out
in them.
and I am. I mean, I'm happy. I'm excited. Their successes are our successes.
Wow.
You know, and just anecdotally, like I have 3 girls in Hope Court who are all moms who have been able to keep their children. You can't say that across dependency. Unfortunately, our foster youth who have children often lose custody of those children. All 3 of my girls have their kids, which is, you know, it again shows that you can sort of restore that faith
and changing the cycle. I mean, so now you're impacting those future children. And the restorative justice piece I happen to know quite a bit about because of PACE and so forth. And there was a judge who wrote this book. It came years ago, Judge O'Connor out of the Sarasota area. She wrote a book called Raised by the Courts. And I think you might have remembered when that was. So she came and was talking about starting programs like this throughout the country because she said literally there were children that were raised in the courts. And she watched them and watched their lives either be destroyed or they were impacted by someone such as yourself and the wonderful judges that care to, in fact, be raised in the right way through the court system. And that was my first time 20-something years ago really seeing the true process of what can happen to a child. And if it is not the right program, it is devastating.
And the front end investment can pay off so big time in the long run. I mean, look, if you have an 18-year-old who doesn't have the life skills, they're going to be out on their own. They have no money. They're going to turn to the wrong ways, and they don't have any support, and they don't have anyone making
survival.
Right. They don't have anyone helping them make the right decisions. And they've done studies, and kids who have like. We don't say aged out of the system anymore. We say transitioned out of foster care, right? Who transition out, and you ask them, do you have a trusted adult? And a lot of them said, no. I don't have that trusted adult. God forbid something happen. I don't have someone I could
nobody to call in the middle of the night.
Right, call in the middle of the night, or I have a question. I don't know what to do.
And that's when they fall for someone else.
Exactly.
And that's where the whole cycle then starts again, right?
Right, and the prison pipeline we often hear about, that's where that was happening. So the idea is, like you're saying, to break the cycle, that these kids transition out of care feeling that there's a support network, not just feeling it, knowing it, that support network is there for them. And it seems, not good, it seems to be working. And we're hopeful that this is a model that we can sort of build here, and it can go, in the same way Judge Bristol championed early childhood court, and it is now a national, helped, spread nationally. Hopefully we can see some of those same successes. And even on my non-Hope Court kids, it's a very youth-centered model. So when we go to hearings and the kids are there, I don't talk to the caseworkers. I mean, I talk to them, just not as much. My focus is the child or the young adult. How are things going? Tell me what's going on. Tell me one good thing. And sometimes the kids are like, nothing good's happening. Okay, tell me what you've been watching on Netflix or TikTok. Like, what should I be watching? Like, what's entertaining to you right now? We start all our Hope Court hearings with an icebreaker. So that the kids
feel relevant.
And they're not just talking, because a lot of times, you're putting like a spotlight on these kids. And
even our own children at the dinner table. I mean, you do that to them and they clam up.
So we do, if you could have a superpower, would it be flying or teleportation? What's your favorite food combination? What's your favorite movie? Are you Team Avengers or Team DC? And I don't, it's not just the kids who answer it. The caseworkers answer it. The guardian ad litem's answer it. I answer it. So they sort of feel like they get to know us a little bit better, and we all have
humanize
100%, and we all have a vested interest in each other. So it really, it's unique, it's fun. I feel like on my Hope Court days, I'm part cheerleader, which I was a cheerleader in high school, so it sort of works.
I see that.
Yeah, you can see it. I'm so shy.
No, and that's wonderful. It makes people feel comfortable.
Right.
And you're actually making them want to have that every time they come in to see you, to have a reason to be patted on the back and to be cheered for.
And what's remarkable is with Hope Court, we see the kids more often or we give them the opportunity to be seen more often. We, instead of having hearings every 3 or 4 months, we have hearings every 6 weeks or so. And sometimes I'll say to the kids, listen, we're going to have another docket in 6 weeks. If you feel like everything's good, you don't have to come back and see me. But if you want me to put you on, no, Judge, let's come back in 6 weeks. And with Zoom, we've had to, unfortunately, we launched this court on Zoom, and it's actually working on Zoom because my kids can come to me. I call them my kids, but
No, then they are.
They
You're
are in a lot of
invested in
ways.
them.
My own children don't get offended. They get it now.
Yes.
But my kids will, come to me from work or on a break between classes, or sometimes, if they have a 9 o'clock, they're coming to me from their bedroom. I'm like, you got to sit up. We're in court, just sit up.
Right.
I know I can see the pillows, but just,
Right.
but they are coming and participating, and the Zoom model has actually worked for us because we talk a lot about in dependency about meeting people where they are, right? And with Zoom, you can literally meet them where they are, whether it's a parent who's taken a break, on their hourly wage job, or someone who's catching a bus to get to work, or your child who, I don't want them to miss a day of school to come to court to see me, but I do want them to come to court. So they go to the guidance counselor's office, log in, participate, and move on. So it's the pandemic has left us with a lot of lessons, some good, some bad, but I would say that the use of Zoom has been great in the dependency system as a whole overall, and particularly in the court.
And you're having that connection with them in some way, and that's important for them, and that's how they communicate to kids.
Right.
Anyway.
It's very right.
They're
To
used
them,
to
it's more
electronic.
natural to be talking to someone on a. Now, are we losing some of our social skills? Probably.
Yeah. Have to keep working on that on the side, but
exactly.
Oh, well, every night when you put your head on the pillow, it must feel really good to know that you've changed someone's life.
It does. I also, because I have these kids, I also worry about them sometimes,
Sure.
But yeah, I always say I have the best job. I love what I do. Of course, sometimes it feels like work, but sometimes
that's encouraging. No, and it's so nice for you to share that with young lawyers, to keep reminding them of why we do what we do.
Right.
Why we fight. And even if they're not in that division necessarily, but they can still help in those areas or get clients there and feel that they're taking a part in changing the system.
And they can be guardians ad litem if they have free time, or become a pro bono attorney ad litem. I mean, there's plenty of opportunity if dependency is not your thing, which I get. It is not for everyone, as evidenced by the fact I was the 6th judge in 3 years.
Yeah.
There are ways for your people to be involved, whether it's volunteering for PACE or, helping out at the flight center, which is for our teens as they, transition out. There are plenty of entryways into the system to help out and to make a difference in a way that maybe you're more comfortable with.
No, and actually I was just at that 211 luncheon, which I love going to, and they award to the philanthropies. And of course I'm always there for PACE or for Lighthouse for the Blind. And you realize that our community, Broward, is really special because Dade's a little bit different, in Palm Beach. I don't know if they have the connection on everybody is there for each step of the way for children from the minute that they're starting off and, a kid's in distress, and then continuing, like you said, for the transitioning all the way through. And we have a really incredible system in Broward, and you're adding to that to make sure that stays as strong as it does all the way through their lives.
We're trying. I was just up at Florida Judicial College because Judge Izquierdo, Judge Russell, and I teach up there together every year. We call ourselves the Three Amigos, and we have a great thing.
Yeah.
But we start talking about
to get you the hats.
Right. we start talking about the programs and services we have in Broward, and sometimes we get these blank stares like, well, we don't have that in our circuit. And it makes us realize just how lucky we are and how dedicated our community is, to
and keep showing that to the rest of the state, and like you said, the rest of the country that doesn't have that type of programming for their citizens.
Right. And hopefully, like I said, the empirical evidence will come out so that people realize, again, that short term, that more immediate investment will pay off long term.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I know you are an avid reader, and you're always you said you love to study different things here and there. What is your favorite book that's had the most impact on you, and that's been maybe turned into a movie, or that you'd like to see turned into a movie?
So the book I can remember as a youth reading, and my whole family read it. One of them is The Power of One, which was turned into a movie, not as good as the book.
Oh.
But, and now I'm drawing a blank on the author. But it's just a story of perseverance, of, always, through difficult times, continuing forward. And it's, I'm pretty sure it's fiction. But I just remember as a child reading it, and it really just struck a chord of like, you got to keep moving forward. Difficult things are going to happen to all of us, and what that difficult thing is depends on your perspective and when it happens and how it happens. But you got to keep pushing forward. And
so you would recommend that one?
Oh, it's a great book. It's a great book. My brother read it. My dad read it. My mom read it. The grandparents read it. Everybody read it.
That's-
But now I try to stick to more fun stuff, like Ready Player One. Like just a fun book. The
Okay.
movie's good, but the book
Which
is
which
better.
one is it?
Ready Player One.
Okay, see, my
Steven
kids are in
Spielberg.
college now, so I guess
Yeah.
I'm not missing that
Oh.
stage of the still having.
Well, what's great is, because I have kids, my kids are almost 13 and 15, I can speak kid,
Yeah, you're-
I have a frame of
You're
reference.
cool in the know. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I'm cool, let's be honest, okay? I have teenagers, I don't know
Yeah,
that I'm cool, but cool enough,
Cool enough,
that
yes.
I can talk to the kids,
Right.
and whether I'm talking Paw Patrol to the little ones,
Right.
or, the Mandalorian to the older ones, Star Wars and all that stuff, I can.
It's
I can
almost
do the
like you
lingo.
need to have a cheat sheet for for different judges
Oh.
or players in that system that don't have that linkage through
yeah.
their own children.
Yeah.
And you feel that sometimes, but you're right. That makes a big difference for them to know that you're on the same page with them
Right.
and you're in that relevant world with them. So, well, we always ask a kind of another fun question about I know Braulio loves, what actress would you choose to portray you in a movie? Let's say it was The Power of One. Who would be that actress that would be Judge Stacey Shulman?
I don't know that I would be in The Power of One, but I will say that I'm a big fan. Maybe it's because of Legally Blonde. I love Reese Witherspoon.
Yes.
And particularly in Legally Blonde, because I sort of feel like a lot of people underestimate me when they see me because I'm little, I'm blonde. When I come off the bench sometimes, people are like, oh my God, I got a mini judge. Because most people don't know this, I'm like 5 feet tall, maybe it's the robe, I don't know. And I always love the fact that in that movie, she was underestimated. Everyone thought she was this
Right.
blonde ditz. And here was this, not to say that I'm a powerhouse, but she was a powerhouse,
Yes,
right?
yes.
And so to me, I think that's awesome. And I will say, sharing an anecdote, my first year of law school, I showed up for Civ Pro the first day, and I had Tony Alfieri for Civ Pro 1 at University of Miami, and he's one of the toughest professors. And he calls on people and makes them stand at the front of the classroom, and you're on call the entire time. Very much the Socratic method. You never know when you're going to be called on. So first day of Civ Pro, very beginning of law school, the first one he brings down to the podium, calls on, and he says, Ms. Schulman, and we had to read a civil action. And he says, I want you to deliver the opening argument in a civil action. So I open my mouth, right? And he's like, you have 2 minutes, go. I open my mouth, I speak, I stop. And the whole room erupts in applause. And I was like, oh God, I guess I put together coherent sentences here. It really wasn't, to this day, I couldn't tell you what I said. Apparently he had called on a girl who looked just like me the year before, who cried and ran out of the room.
Oh.
And that was a lesson to people, you got to be prepared, I'm going to be tough on you, whatever. So I stop, and he turns to his dean's fellow and says, well, I guess Ms. Schulman set the bar for this class. P.S. I ended up being his dean's fellow for the next 2 years. I'm still in touch with him.
Awesome. Yeah.
But again, someone looked at me, saw a little blonde girl, thought they were going to intimidate me, thought that I was going to be the example,
Right.
and I tried to flip the model on its head. So
Good
I
for
guess
you.
that's why I sort of relate to that.
So, yeah, exactly. In a lot of her movies, right? The
Yeah,
Reese Witherspoon
and
model.
she's a mom. She has kids with around my kids' age, so you gotta
Exactly.
love it.
I totally see it. I like that one she did with the hostage situation, and it
Yeah.
was, she turned out to be much more than they ever expected. And
She's played some good stuff. So
And that's good to always do that, right? And to exceed people's expectations.
Right.
I'm always telling my girls that too, my
Yes.
daughters, and come across very humbly like you do, but then really show that you know what you're doing.
we try, right? We try.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Well, thank you so much for
No,
your time
thank
today.
you. And I'm honored to be included in this group and to be thought of. And like I said, to me, this is just what you do, right? It's not work.
Right.
It's just what I should be doing. And so I feel very lucky that the citizens of Broward County elected me and that I get to work as a circuit
Absolutely.
court judge.
No, exactly. You're using your gifts and your talents to serve every day. So a true civil servant in the way that it's meant to be. And
Hopefully, and listen, I hopefully I can continue to do this job that, like I said, is what I really want to do.
well,
So.
thank you for all that you do, and thank you for your support of the BCBA and everything
you.
that we do for our community. And we look forward to continuing to watch you change lives.
Thank you.
Thank you.